Sometimes I wonder how a country can be $38 trillion into debt while simultaneously taxing everything that the citizens spend, everything that the citizens make money on, and having to actually do taxes each year on top of everything else that they do, right? It seems like the taxpayer dollars at this point for the United States is just a way to fund fraud. And this is why we need to seriously look into other avenues in which we can start to reclaim sovereignty because nobody told you that you have to use the US dollar, right? If you're in the United States or wherever you are in the world watching this, nobody told you that you have to use the US dollar or the euro or whatever. You can play the system, right? You can play the system to play the system, but you kind of have to get on as many networks as possible at this point. And the only way to do that is to start putting in the work and to ensure that you are set up to thrive financially, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Because the truth of the matter is that nobody's going to be able to fix a country that's $38 trillion in debt. Inflation is here to stay, and inflation is just like, think about this, right? I was thinking about this when I was doing some research on the Federal Reserve. They have a aim and a goal to get to a 2% to 4% inflation rate per year. And as of 2025, and at the time that I'm filming this, it is January 1st of 2026. As of 2025, every 36 days, every United States dollar that you use lost 1%, which is 1 cent, of its purchasing power. So roughly 10% inflation last year, just on the US dollar alone. Now, how can this be? Because it looks like the S&P 500 is up like 17.4% or whatever. The Dow Jones is up. Everything's up, right? Everything's looking good. As far as the economy goes, looks great. Looks fantastic. And yet, for some reason, more people are jobless, and I don't buy the United States job percentage and the amount of people that don't have jobs, that are unemployed. I don't buy those percentages at all, because I know that there are people who are literally trying to scrounge for any job that they could, because at this point they just want a job. Now, I also know people who are doing very well for themselves. Okay, now I myself, I have a part-time job slash day job, as well as my entrepreneurship jobs as well, because at this point I'm still building the business, technically speaking, right? I'm not yet like an owner, even though I do own the business. I think about owners as, whenever you own a business, what you're actually doing is you're actually being able to have the operation operate without you. You just own it, right? Like, that's the point. But if you have a entrepreneurship job, so to speak, where you have to show up, that's still technically a job. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that that's the way that it is. So we're in a very big predicament right now as a society, and we have the true responsibility as citizens to owe it to our bloodline, I would suppose, not really any other citizens. It's just, we don't really owe it to the public, because the world doesn't owe us understanding, and we don't really owe the world anything, but we owe it to the future generations to be as sovereign as possible, because there's just no fixing this issue. How can you fix the issue of inflation? And look, I'm no expert or anything like that as far as when it comes to finances. I don't claim to be a financial guru. That's one of the reasons why I named the YouTube channel that I'm doing pure economic and financial stuff on as the Economic Savage. Okay, I'm a savage when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm not necessarily learned when it comes to the financial terrain, but I know enough to where I can see certain terrains, and I can see certain trends, and I can see how I think about those situations and how to move forward accordingly. So the thing is like, we're just at a point where if we don't decide really what we want to do with our own lives, we're going to be submitting to somebody else's plan. Because if we don't have a plan, we're going to be on somebody else's, right? And so it's even just having the plan in the palm of our hand or in our minds and executing it accordingly, even if it's a little bit loose, right? Because like Napoleon Bonaparte, who was the French emperor, he was very loose in his plans. He just planned for anything that could happen, and he planned for all of the calculations that could occur, and then he acted accordingly. And I think that that's really the way that we ought to perform our plans as we move closer and closer into this technological age, in which certainty is an ever decreasing factor. Uncertainty is an ever increasing factor when it comes to actual plans. So the way that I think about gold, silver, and Bitcoin, for example, is it is not only my psychological insurance, it is also my physical monetary insurance policy. It's not necessarily something that I'm going to see to be incredible down the line where, oh, I'm going to make so much money from this, because I even saw a list of assets, just from the last 10 years, and all those assets, if you put $10,000 into each of those assets 10 years ago, what would they be worth today? And gold and silver, all the precious metals and such, were the lowest out of all of those. So it's not that gold and silver and all these precious metals are going to be making you money. It's more about they're going to be the things that you can fall back on if times really get rough and crap hits the fan. So what I'm seeing now is the ever more increasing opportunity for cash flowing assets and income streams and inflow. You want to make sure you have more inflow than outflow. More inflow than outflow. Because if you have more inflow than outflow, it's all coming down to living on less than you make. It's really that simple. So again, this is not financial advice. This is just the way that I'm seeing things, and I'm just telling you guys the way that I see it, how I see it. So with all that being said, I hope this message was useful and insightful for you. Stay blessed. Until next time.